get this down here where it belongs. Mark did a nice job, didn't he? It is kind of like coming home to Kansas State and see all the old friends and everybody. I'm Dee Likes, the Emeritus CEO of KLA, and it's my great pleasure to be MC for my good lifelong friend, Jerry Bohn. 49th annual Stockman's Dinner. Wow. Isn't that something? It recognizes those people who have given their time and their effort over the years to strengthen the livestock and meat industry in Kansas, and it's a great thing. You know, I look around this room, and literally everyone in here ought to be introduced individually. But since we can't do that, there's two introductions I do want to make. Mike Beam, my longtime associate at KLA, the current new Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Kansas. Mike. All of us that know you, Mike, are really pleased that Governor Kelly picked you. We know you're going to be successful in that job. And then one more introduction I'd like to make. My sweetheart, wife of 32 years, Terry Likes. That would be the most important person in the room to me. Wasn't that a wonderful dinner? Boy, oh boy, U.S. premium beef, prime steaks, cut by Kansas City Steaks. I really enjoyed it. Well, you know, I gave you my kind of retirement title, CEO Emeritus, which many of you in this room might think you know what that means since there's so many academics here. But a good friend of mine over in Topeka, Frank Sabatini, who former member of the Board of Regents, took emeritus status from the bank that he owned. We were having lunch one day before I left town, and he said, I see you're going to be CEO Emeritus. He said, do you want me to tell you what that means? And I said, what? He said, well, it's Latin. It means stay out of the way. I assume all you college professors already knew that, but I didn't. Well, the list of people who've been honored as Stockman of the Year reads like a who's who of the livestock business here in Kansas. I mean, I've been here for most of them. I looked in the program. I think my first one was Earl Brookover, 1976. And we're sitting at a table like this, and they're up there just going on and on about, oh, Earl, you know, and he was kind of a man of few words, and he leaned over and he goes, too long. There have been 14 past KLA presidents honored as Stockman of the Year. And I think it's appropriate that we're here tonight for Jerry Bohn. But we're continuing the legacy of the icons in this business. And that's really important to remember. The men and women who've been honored here are icons in the industry. And so I'm pleased to be here for my good friend Jerry Bohn. During the social period, you saw those pictures of Jerry and his great family. Julie, his wife of over 40 years, taken during his long and impressive career, and it has been an impressive career. You know, in late 1975, I was a cattle fax analyst in Denver, and I got a call from Jerry. He's working in this little feed yard down by Yates Center, Kansas. He said, hey, we'd known each other in college. And he said, I'm kind of looking to make a move. Do you know of anything? And I said, well, we're going to need somebody else out here. I can't offer you the job, but I can get you an interview with Topper. Topper Thorpe is our general manager. So Jerry came out, interviewed, Topper hired him, and he quickly attained competency as a market analyst, and not very long he was promoted to director of market analysis, meaning he supervised the other 7 analysts. And he had a chance at that point, you know, to really hone his interpersonal skills, learn how to manage people. I've talked to some of those people, and they say, well, you know, he was a pretty straight shooter. He let us be individuals. He didn't stifle our creativity. But we knew that in our region, we were supposed to be the experts on what was going on in that market. And, you know, that's a pretty tricky job in a lot of cases. Jerry had to deliver information many times when the market was heading that way that probably wasn't very welcome information. And so anyway, a few years go by. Now I'm still at KLA. It's about 1982. I get another call from Jerry Bohn. Hey, Likes, you did a pretty good job for me last time. I'm thinking about moving again. Know of anything? And I said, matter of fact, I do. Some of our members are buying that feed yard down at Pratt, and they are looking for a good manager. Why don't I put you in touch? And probably with Dan. I don't remember exactly, but I don't remember who called who, but as they say, the rest is history. He went down there. Feed yard had capacity for 34,000 head. They had 15,000 cattle. Within a few years after Jerry taking over, he and his board had guided that operation into 4 feedlot locations and over 80,000 cattle on feed. So help me welcome to the podium Mr. Dan Bird, who was instrumental in bringing Jerry to Pratt Feeders. Dan, come up.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Dee. I'm gonna add a few things to what he said and kind of correct a few things at the same time, but that's all right. That's happened before. Yeah, but Jerry Bohn was hired at Pratt Feeders, Inc. On August of 1982. I guess I'll never forget that, but that's a long time ago, just between you and me. But let's start from the beginning. And some of this you've heard, and we'll whip right through it. But after Jerry graduated from here in K-State, he spent in time 3 years in the Army. Then he ended up at Blackjack Feeders, Osage City, and then 7 years in Cattlefax. Okay, well, that's where things began to happen. But early in 1982, I had a call from D. Likes. Or I had called D. Likes, excuse me. I had touched base with him. We had a partner that was doing business with Cattlefax, and unbeknownst to any of them, he'd been talking to Jerry Bohn, and as the analyst deal. But anyway, I was looking for a new young manager that could be whipping right in there, and asked Dee if he had any names that he could give me and I could contact. Well, Dee suggested Jerry Bohn at Cattlefax, okay? Well, now we're getting back to where we started, except I got to tell you how Pratt Feeders came about just before Jerry showed up. And in December of 1980, Pratt Feeders was feedlot at the time. That was a Chandler feedlot, and but it all of a sudden was for sale, and there were 6 cattlemen, farmers, ranchers, whatever you want to call them back then, and I was one of them, from Anthony, and 2 from Pratt. Lucky Lilliquist was manager, and Lester Goen was millman, and we wanted some local people, and it took us quite a bit of convincing, but we got them involved, and we purchased that feedlot from a Steve Clemens in Chicago, Illinois, as well as the Continental Bank of Chicago, Illinois, were the sellers. As we had first started with Lucky as manager, we got to hearing rumors there were truckers driving down Highway 54 with their CBs, talking on it all the time, and people got to picking up on everything that they were talking about, and every once in a while the conversation would come in that the feedlot had just sold to the Chicago Mafia. Okay? Well, you're looking at part of the Chicago Mafia, but that's all right. But by the time we had hired Jerry in August, of '82, rumors of the Chicago Mafia had pretty well come to an end. So bringing Jerry in, and people, you're going to hear it all night, but what a great guy he was. I didn't know him, and most of us, all of us didn't know him. The one guy that was doing the conversation with him, which was a partner, didn't have a clue who we were bringing in to interview, okay? And so anyway, we got along there, but it was, so we definitely hired Jerry, needless to say, and got him in at the feedlot. I can just imagine them moving from Denver, coming into Pratt. I got the indication also that Julie was kind of wanting to get closer to home in Wichita, and boy, did she ever. But anyway, it was time now to for the ownership of Pratt Feeders and the new manager, Jerry Bohn, to get to know each other, which all of you people, most of you people know what goes on in a feedlot, but boy, did we ever get to know each other, huh? Early on in the game, and trying to pick up a new feedlot, and had about 2,500 Holsteins in the pen, and a few of the owners had like we all do at times, buying feedlots, you put a pen of cattle in there. So we had a few of that, but that's what Jerry had to start with. Well, so we got along great, and in March of 1985, Steve Dittmer did an article on Pratt Feeders. And in that article, he asked Jerry how he liked managing a feed yard after his days at Cattlefax. And I love this. I mean, and this was just a year and a half, couple of years after he'd been there. And it was short of the 34,000, but I'll tell you later that we kept increasing sizes on our feedlots, so whatever. But Jerry said, and I quote in this article, "I'm enjoying the challenge. It's never boring. There are lots of things to keep track of: nutrition, veterinary things, people, time, money management, marketing. The marketing knowledge from my Cattlefax days has been very helpful." End of quote. Okay, that's Jerry. Short, sweet, to the point, okay? Jerry also mentioned the contacts in the article, and he and I just happened to go to the NCA, National Cattlemen's Association. We're kind of dating ourselves, and most of the people in the room understand this, I think. But anyway, annual convention in Las Vegas. So after that article is when we went, and I was amazed at the number of contacts and people that Jerry ran into, and I ran into tagging along with him at that early convention that we went to. It's just unbelievable, and he knows more people today than you can shake a stick at. Another article in the Kansas Stockman by Jane Ramsbottom, February 1985. Jerry was already a member of KLA Marketing Transportation Committee and well on his way to being an NCA Marketing Committee member. Okay, there's a few little things back then that nobody really kind of remembered, but anyway, he was well on his way to working his way through these organizations. But and in this article with Jane, Jerry went on to say, and I quote, "I believe in KLA and what it does and stands for. KLA is a strong voice for the livestock industry in Kansas and Washington, D.C." End quote. Jane went on to say, after he said all of this, people like Jerry Bohn don't wait for things to happen. They make them happen. And boy, when you come into you're young and you come into a feedlot operation and you have a bunch of flatlanders and people that are cranking and every once in a while want to add another feedlot, he had a lot to do to make things happen, and he did. But I had mentioned that Jerry had served the 3 years in the Army, and it's in your brochure. But that's probably where he acquired this matter-of-fact and focused demeanor that he's known for, and that we used to kind of kid him about. But at the same time, we learned pretty quick how important that was and what a great job he was doing with that demeanor, okay? So, and then Jerry went ahead and mentioned that he finished his duty with the National Guard as a lieutenant colonel, which has been written about, and that's a great honor too. So in 1989, the owners of Pratt Feeders, Inc. purchased Ashland Feeders. We were off and running. Jerry was general manager now after being at Pratt, and now he's general manager with Pratt and Ashland, okay? It was an 8,700 head background lot, and most of you guys know where it was. It was grown up in weeds. It was 11 miles north of Sitka, Kansas, and it was halfway between Protection and Ashland. So now we're zeroing in on where Ashland Feeders is, okay? Jerry then became general manager of Pratt and Ashland. There was an indoor swimming pool. There were 2 homes on the property for employees. And Jerry, along with the ownership, thank you, then built Ashland Feeders into a 15,000 head full feed lot. Mick Sharp is manager at Ashland today. So at this time in 1989, we added 5,000 head capacity to Pratt Feeders, and that brought it up to a little over 5,000, 35,000 head feedlot, full capacity. So you're beginning to figure out about every 6 to 8 years, for some odd reason, we got the urge to be looking for, and we'd found another feedlot. And in 1995, we purchased Buffalo Feeders from Frank Walton from Kansas City. Jerry became general manager of Buffalo Feeders in Ashland and Pratt. Buffalo had a capacity of about 30,000 head. Tom Fanning is manager now today at Buffalo Feeders. By then, Jerry was commenting that the ownership was bottom line oriented. We were going out and buying feedlots, not too expensive. They needed a lot of work. We picked them up. We did whatever it took, and the owners got the reputation of being bottom line oriented. Okay. In this same time frame, we'd had a meeting at Pratt with Steve Hunt, who was advocating membership in U.S. Premium Beef. And it wasn't an easy sell back in those days. I think Mark understands it wasn't an easy sell. But anyway, with Jerry helping promote the concept, we became founding members in 1996 and added more shares later. And by the way, Jerry is still on the board of U.S. Premium Beef. So anyway, the owners of Pratt, Ashland, and Buffalo started looking for another lot. And if anybody ever heard that feeding cattle was a disease, buying the feedlots is too. Yeah, we found that out. But right on schedule, we bought Hayes Feeders in 2003. Jerry became general manager, and by this time, part owner. And we were feeling better because we knew what a sharp manager he was, and we wanted to keep him, you know. But he did finally become full-blown partner with Pratt Feeders. So, and about this time, you're looking at Buffalo, you're looking at Hayes, and then you've got Ashland and Pratt. And we picked a guy out, one of our owners, designated him as in charge of travel. Well, one meeting, he mentioned he had found a used Charlie Daniels Band bus. Say that about 3 times in a row, but a Charlie Daniels Band bus. It was a used one, and it was used. But it had, in the back half, it had 4 bunk beds, which we never did travel far enough to use, thank you. And in the front, it had sofas and chairs, and we were riding in style. We were going to the feedlots in Charlie Daniels used band bus, okay? And about 10 days, it showed up in Anthony, and then we took it to Pratt, the next monthly meeting. Well, it was good for trips to Buffalo and Hayes, and when we could keep it running, that is, because that was a problem, we'd go by a truck repair shop in Hayes, going through the main drag to go north to the feedlot. We'd honk as we went by, and he would know that we were going to be calling him to do some repair on the bus while we had a meeting. That's how we work those things. But by this time, we had improved Hayes, refurbished it, paid for it, and decided to sell it. We sold Hayes in 2016. Well, Jerry had already warned us ahead of that time frame. Then he told the owners that he planned to retire in the future, and that we should be kind of getting ready for that. Well, we hired Dave Latta in 2007 to manage Pratt. Jerry retired from general manager in May of 2016. Well, we moved Dave Latta to general manager, and so now, since that time, Jerry is still part owner of Pratt, Ashland, and Buffalo, and owns land in Pratt, west of Pratt. Since the retirement, Jerry and Julie have built a new home in Wichita, and I would guess that's quite a bit Julie. I worked on that home in Wichita, yeah. And Jerry is progressing through the chairs at NCBA. Great deal. What a ride, huh, Jerry? I mean, almost 34 years managing Pratt feeders and the outlying lots. And so I'm here to congratulate Jerry for being honored Stockman of the Year. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I hadn't picked up the bus story. I called Vernon a couple weeks ago, and I said, Vernon, I need some zingers on Jerry. And Vernon called me back in about a week, and he said, you know what? I've talked to my brothers and sisters, and we decided we must be kind of a boring family. We can't think of anything. Jerry and I knew each other at K-State, but he was on the judging team, which is up here, respectable, and I was on the rodeo team, which is down there. They were respected. They were, you know, the department and the professors could all identify with judging team stars like Jerry, and the rodeo team guys, they thought maybe we were escaped convicts. And there may have been a few of them that were. I'm sure glad that's improved since then, Evan. It really has. You know, here's something you may not know about Jerry Bohn. He has literally been the star of every judging team he's been on since high school. You know, he won the F.W. Bell Award when we were in school. I remember that. And thinking, wow, you know, that was a pretty big deal. So one story that showcases just how good Jerry Bohn was involves a time right out of high school when he and his brother and a friend went to Denver to judge at the National Western. Well, the night before the contest, they were there a little early, and they thought maybe a little entertainment would be in order, you know, to loosen up before the contest. So they went up to Boulder, and I think there were liquid refreshments involved. Point is, they didn't get back to their hotel until the wee hours of the morning. They had to be up at 5, go out there and judge. Jerry was the high individual of that contest. So that's how, to show you how good he is good even when he doesn't feel good. Quite a testament, I thought. So, as Dan said, in 1996, Pratt Feeders became one of the original shareholders and founding members of U.S. Premium Beef. Jerry's been on the board for, I guess, almost all of that time. And so here to talk about his memories of Jerry and U.S. Premium Beef is Mark Gardner, the current chairman of U.S. Premium Beef. Let's welcome Mark.
Thank you very much, Dee. When I think about it, I was asked to speak, and I think back to the first time that I remembered Jerry Bohn, and it was in the mid-'80s, and actually Jerry and Julie hired me to come and judge a horse show. And a lot of you knew my dad, and Henry goes, "That's the manager of Pratt Feeders. They're doing quite a job." Uncle Larry would tell you Pratt Feeders was doing so well that you had to ask for permission if you could even get in to feed cattle there. And so I was scared. And I was like, this is an important guy, and I'm going to judge horses, and he's going to have kids there. And you may hear this again tonight, but Jerry's a little bit stoic. And so we judged the first class, and I think they did very, very well. And, one of the things that they teach us here at Kansas State University, when you're judging, no matter what, pull your hat down, make it official, it's your opinion, and live by it. So we went through the whole day and went through there, and Jerry and Julie said thank you very much. And I was shocked when he called me a year later to come back again. And so that was exciting. And that's, you talk about all this history, and you think about, really, there's a lot of young people here. We talk about the old friends and everything, but it's the young friends. And you think back to those times, and I talked to a friend of Jerry's that's a friend of mine. Many of you know Rich Blair from South Dakota. And you think about this stoicism, and what you think about the stoicism, what you don't know is all the passion that's underneath there. Okay? So I asked Rich, I said, tell me what Jerry was like to work for. He said, we were negotiating salaries, and all the guys were saying they'd done this and they'd done that, and just go in there and give it to him. So he goes in there and he's asking Jerry, they offer a $19,500 salary. And Rich says, why don't we make it $20,000? Jerry said, no. Oh, he said, okay, thank you very much. That's the end of that conversation. And Jerry's a man of few words, but when he speaks, you've got to listen. But what Rich also told me was that in 1979, you changed his life. You gave him the opportunity. And I think if you look at the people that have surrounded Jerry and his family, it's connecting those dots to pick those winners. I asked David Latta, I said, tell me a little bit about your working with Jerry. From day one, working in there, he mentored me. To this day, he's retired, and he still mentors me. He still helps. His wife was telling him about a coworker that had nothing to, Pratt Feeders is pretty famous, and Jerry Bohn and Cattlefax, KLA, all those things we'll talk about. She didn't know him from Adam. Well, my uncle feeds at Pratt Feeders, and David's wife asked, well, why? Because it's known all over that Jerry Bohn is the most honest person in this industry. And that would be true. Another thing that Rich Blair shared with me, his nephew, Britton, is married to Amanda, who's a meat scientist from South Dakota State. And Amanda, as many of you students, she went to her very first NCBA convention, and she was a little bit alone and scared, and there's all these important people. Jerry Bohn went over and talked to her, found out who she was, where she was from, and she didn't know any of the Blairs at that time, so that was a neat reconnection later on. And so to this day, their relationship and that ability to talk to people and just learn about their lives. So let's talk a little bit about U.S. Premium Beef. And, You know, that was a really good steak, Tracy. Thank you so much. That was awesome. And thank you to all the professors that prepared and served us. That was great. You know, Jerry, we never told you this, but that day in Pratt, we were dying because we were selling our hearts out on the Blue Sky Tour. This is really the future. And we're kind of sitting there and we're watching Jerry's face, and we dubbed you the prosecutor that day because you never showed one bit of emotion. And we walk out of there and we're going, I don't think we convinced him, you know. But Jerry is so open-minded, so fact-based, and he thought about it, and he talked about it, and he talked about it with the ownership, and he made a decision to invest in not only the future of Pratt Feeders, but what we'd like to say is a big part of the future of the beef industry. And, you know, you have these meetings, and, you know, we used to always have our meetings at 5:30 in the morning. We still do that some for conference calls so we didn't miss work. And then when we get together, it's often not a lot of consensus. You know, as a family, we talk about, you know, how y'all get along. Well, sometimes we don't. But we argue this and we argue that, and we look at Jerry Bohn, and, you know, he doesn't often speak. But when he speaks, we listen. Because he takes all the facts. He takes all the information. And he makes a good decision. And so when you think about this stoicism and you think about his passion that you don't see that's burning underneath there to make this a better place, to give people an opportunity, he was talking to a friend of mine, a friend of all of you, and they were saying, who's going to speak? And he listed the people that were going to speak, and he said, oh, by the way, you're going to sing for us. So Emily Fink, it's now your time to come up here and sing. Oh, okay. But that sense of humor is always right there. And so what does Jerry Bohn do when he retires? He serves even more. You know, hearing him talk about his mission trip to Africa, the things that they've done, watching him light up, and then he re-ups with NCBA, the current vice president, on track to be the NCBA president in the year 2021. That's pretty cool when you retire and you go to work even more for all of us. You know, we often hear it's very important to lead by example. Jerry Bohn, thank you for your example.
Wow, what a great job and a great testimony for Jerry. Well, like he said, you know, after all those years to retire and then really go to work in a volunteer leadership position, and that no-nonsense business style is exactly some of the comments that I've heard from many, many people. And you got a heck of a lot more out of Rich Blair than I did when I talked to him. I did hear that same story about going in there, an offer of $19,500, and he's telling Jerry, let's just make it 20. And Jerry goes, nope, the last $500. And I was surprised that they'd got no salaries clear up to $19,000 since I was there. My gosh. Cattlefax was poor in those days, by the way, and we're glad that's not still the same. And so Jerry, you know, he's been very involved in KLA all of that time that he was running Pratt Feeders. He was doing volunteer positions at KLA. I'm not going to try to read them all. That'd make my part of this too long. But I'll just say he was chairman of the Cattle Feeders Council. He was on the Cattlemen's Beef Board and the Beef Board Operating Committee that actually spends the checkoff money. A member of the Kansas Beef Council and president of the association in 1997. There's a lot of work there, and all kinds of committee work leading up to that. Let me give you an example of how dedicated he really is to the beef industry. Every one of his 3 children are named for your product, T-Bone. Todd, Tessa, and Tara. That's dedication, isn't it? Let's give him a hand for that. Well, I want to welcome to the podium Kendall Frazier, another great K-Stater, former KLA staff member, been at NCBA since 1985, currently serving as the CEO. Kendall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dean. So I'm going to raise this microphone back up. So it's great to be back in Manhattan. Monday afternoon, I walked into a meeting of our staff, and at the NCBA staff, as you can imagine, in Denver, we have many graduates of land-grant universities. And I walked into a room with Texas Tech graduates, Oklahoma State graduates, and Iowa State graduate. And somebody said, well, where are you going, Kendall? And I said, well, I'm headed out to Manhattan, the hometown of the basketball team that leads the Big 12 Conference. So get over it. You know, I first met Jerry when we were both students at K-State in the late 1960s and early 70s. And he was a talented student leader, and everyone knew he would end up having a fabulous career. And Jerry, what a career it's been for you. Dee and Dan and Mark have talked about Jerry's involvement in KLA and the Kansas beef industry, and I'd like to share just a few quick thoughts about his involvement in the national cattle industry organizations. You know, someone who's worked for associations almost 40 years, I'm always amazed and honored to think about how much time volunteer leaders take away from their family and their home operations to serve their associations, both at the state and national level. And it's a great tribute to these individuals that do that. Jerry served many roles at the national level, including the NCBA Executive Committee. He's chaired the Live Cattle Marketing Committee, our Finance and Audit Committee, and he served as co-chair of the Beef Safety Checkoff Committee, which is a joint committee between the Federation of State Beef Councils and the Cattlemen's Beef Board. In addition, Jerry served on the Beef Promotion Operating Committee, and for those that aren't familiar about the Operating Committee, that is a group of 20 individuals that really make the decisions on how checkoff funds are spent. It is one of the most important decision-making bodies in American agriculture. A few weeks ago in New Orleans at the Cattle Industry Annual Convention, Jerry was elected NCBA Vice President, which means in 2 years he will become the 91st president in the 130-year history of NCBA and its predecessor organizations. And he will join a very distinguished list of industry leaders. He will be the 6th president from Kansas of the national organization, and he'll follow in the footsteps of Bill House, Don Smith, Max Dietz, Jan Lyons, who's in our audience tonight, and Tracy Bruner. But Jerry didn't achieve all these leadership roles by chance. You have to have a certain set of character traits to be elected and appointed to these kind of positions. And so in watching Jerry over the years and talking to other people about him, here's a list of phrases that are used to describe Jerry. He pays great attention to detail. His word is his bond. He takes responsibility. He is a concise communicator. He is dependable. He is painstaking, conscientious. He can deal with complex problems. He's a logical thinker, and he has a strong work ethic. So these are the characteristics of the person that you have named Stockman of the Year. Jerry, congratulations to you and your family. I don't think we could find a more deserving person.
Well, that's a great job, Kendall. And, you know, we're really lucky to have Kendall Frazier as CEO of NCBA. He's done a great job. You know, when I talked to Julie and the adult kids about trying to find some zingers for Jerry, I told you I pretty much came up empty. So I had to make up a couple. Actually, I did find one pretty good one. And this came from Tessa. When she was a young girl and they went out, Jerry had a cow that needed to be doctored, so they took the horses out. And she said that they got this cow kind of on the run, and Jerry got his rope out and just about ready to let go, and that cow ducked, and the horse ducked, but Jerry didn't duck. So he went off. And I guess we can all identify with that, can't we? Anybody in the audience that's never happened to? I mean, boy, and if it's only happened once, that's a pretty good testament, I think, to his horsemanship and how careful he really is. Well, the kids were often with Jerry. He'd go out to drive the pens on Sunday afternoon, you know, and she said that they would always tell him about the smell of his pickup, and he would always reply, "Honey, that's the smell of money," which is kind of true. But you know what Kendall said about the words that describe Jerry. I got many of those same words when I talk to people that have known him. They say things like humble, steadfast, dependable, always fact-based, always wanted to have the facts in front of him before making a decision. And he never rushed into things, had a lot of patience. Pretty much unflappable, they'll tell you. And so I talked to the current CEO of Cadillac, Randy Block. And here's what he told me. I want to read this. Jerry hired me in the fall of 1980. His expectations were pretty simple. I would know more about my region and the market and what was going to change the market than anybody else in the country. Jerry and Topper put together a group of farm and ranch kids that were teachable. Jerry had the job to keep us all pointed in the right direction. He did a great job, but he let us be individuals and didn't stifle our creativity. In 1983, not long after Jerry had left Cadillac and gone to Pratt, he invited me, Randy, to come and speak to his feeders and owners. Dan probably remembers this. Randy said, and you all know what a great speaker Randy Block is. I mean, he fills a room no matter where he goes. CAB meeting, KLA meeting, NCBA puts a couple thousand people in the room for his reports. He's a great speaker. This was his very first speaking engagement outside of the office. Very first. He said he was as nervous as he could be. He had about 14 pages of handwritten notes, no visuals, no graphs, no nothing, and he was scared to death. He said it had to be boring. He said, I look back on it today and I think Jerry should have charged me to come and speak to their group. He said to you, Jerry, you allowed me to find a passion and a role in the industry that I will never take for granted and always be thankful for. Congratulations on this well-deserved honor of the Stockman of the Year, Randy Block. And, you know, our boss, when Jerry and I were there, was Topper Thorpe, one of the great Americans, a guy who gave us simple values that were transferable to any other industry or any venue that we would go to. We talked about this. Jerry and I have talked about it. Several of us have. Topper never ran a feed yard. Topper never ran an association. Topper never was in the cattle business, but he gave us some very simple values that are transferable and that we all still use today. And I look back on my Cadillac career, and I'll bet Jerry feels the same way. I could have paid them, and it would have been beneficial because it kind of made the rest of our career. So Topper said, I asked him about, what's your recollection about Jerry? Oh, yeah, steady Eddie. Always took care of business. He's an asset to any business or any effort. But he said all the basic things with Jerry Bohn were already there before he came to Cadillac. So his upbringing, his childhood, his youth, and And I never could find anything really very embarrassing, to talk about. So I called Bill Abel, his judging team coach. I got about the same damn thing. He said, well, he's a first-class act. He was always the quiet giant in the room, imperturbable, unshakable, no waves, and always a gentleman. So everybody I talked to gave me some version of the old cowboy saying, I don't think you can hook him up wrong. Jerry, you've got high ethics, honor. Come up here and receive your award as Stockman of the Year. Let's give Jerry Bohn a big hand.
Well, thank you all very much. It's quite an honor to receive this award, and LMIC and Kansas State, thank you very, very much. It's been an exciting time, and I thank you for the opportunity to accept this award and to visit a couple of minutes about my career. And you're going to see here as I talk that people and Kansas State are pretty much entwined in everything that I've ever done ever since I've graduated from Kansas State. I've got my family with me tonight. None of us are very successful without a good team. And so there's a couple of teams, family team, my Pratt Feeders team. I'm going to recognize them here in a minute too. But my family's here, my wife Julie of almost 47 years. The other night I was telling Julie, honey, in your wildest dream, did you ever think that I would get this award? She looked at me, she said, honey, you haven't been in my wildest dreams. We were talking at our table. Kendall's wife told Julie that they had just moved to Denver when Kendall went to work for NCBA or NCA at that time, National Cattlemen, and said, man, I really admired your wife because you were moving her from Denver to Pratt, Kansas. I said, yeah, there's ditches along I-70, and that's her feet dragging all the way over there. But we ended up living in Pratt for 36 years, and when we moved to Wichita recently, there were some tears shed by Julie because she hated to leave Pratt. So we made a home there, raised our family there, and it was a really great time for us and a great career. So I want to introduce you to my family that's here tonight, my wife Julie, our oldest daughter Tara and her husband Matt, and their daughters Eva and Isabel. They live in Lenexa, Kansas. My son Todd and his wife Natalie and granddaughter Lauren. They're from Springfield, Missouri. My youngest daughter Tessa and her husband Brandon, our grandsons Mason and Miles. They live in Wichita, Kansas. And I'm from a big family. I've got 7 siblings. A few of them are here tonight also. We'll start over here. My sister Barbara and her husband Gary O'Neill from Lenexa, Kansas. My sister Sharon and her husband Tom Shine from Wichita. My brother Vernon from Dwight. My brother Rod and his wife Bethany from here in Manhattan. And my sister Donna Bone from Wichita. And I've got 2 others that weren't here, Lisa from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my brother Mike who lives in La Jolla, California. So they're my team, but there was another team, and none of us can be successful without a good team around you, and that was my group, my team at Pratt Feeders, and there's a group of them here tonight. Would you all stand up, everybody that's from Pratt Feeders? Thank you all for being here, and they represent about 80 team members that are running our feed yards and our farming operation there in South Central Kansas and Northwest Oklahoma. Kansas State. Kansas State is very central to me and in my career. Kansas State runs deep in our family. I have 2 uncles that graduated from here. 7 of the 8 of our, in my family, of the 8 of us, 7 of us graduated from Kansas State. All 3 of my children graduated from Kansas State. Several of my nieces and nephews and cousins. So Kansas State is very near and dear to us as a family. People that influenced my life: Clint McDiffett. Arlen Detmer's here tonight from Alta Vista. He's a friend. He was a friend of Clint's. Clint was on the judging team here at Kansas State. He was a young farmer in our community when I was growing up. I worked for him in the summer, driving a tractor and baling hay and all of those things. But Clint also had an interest in kids. And he took me and my younger brother Mike and another family nearby, 2 brothers. So a set of 2 brothers of us, and I think there was a picture here earlier that showed our 4-H judging team, and he took us all over the central part of the country to judging contests. I think someone mentioned our 4-H team won the Denver Livestock Show judging contest in 1969. We also won the National FFA judging contest that same year in Kansas City. But it was all due to Clint and him taking an interest in us, and he got that background under Dr. Good here at Kansas State. Dr. Bill Abel. I was on the first judging team that Bill coached while he was here when he came to Kansas State. Joe Ebert was one of my team members with us. Abel always got up, every day he got us up when we were on a workout trip. He said, "It's a great day to be alive." I remember one time he took us to we always stayed in high-class hotels, Joe. Everything was pretty high class. We were in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. I think we'd been judging sheep or on a workout trip that day. That's at Murray State, I think a junior college in southeast Oklahoma. We pulled into this motel, and the sign said modern and clean and efficient. They handed us a portable heater to plug in the wall to heat the room that night. We stayed 4 to a room, so that means that we had to sleep with somebody in a double bed. There wasn't any queen or king beds. And somebody jumped in the shower, and the wall between the bedroom where we slept and the bathroom, there was an opening between it. Somebody turned the shower on, and the water started quirting over on top of the bed. So Abel took us to a lot of cool places. But he had a large impact on my life and taught me a lot, and I consider him a friend and a mentor today. My career at Cattlefax, Dee mentioned that. Dee was there when I started. Topper Thorpe, probably everyone knows who he was, the impact that he had on my life and on my career. Cattlefax jump-started my career. Dan mentioned the contacts that I was able to make while I was there. They've proved invaluable all through the years. There was a K-State thread there. Tim Bennett hired me. Tim was a graduate of Kansas State. Dee Likes, Doug Dietz, Kevin Good, who's still there today, Pat Coons, Vince Coons, the list goes on and on. There were several other K-Staters that have worked there over the years. So again, people in Kansas State, a thread that just seems to go through my whole career. My KLA involvement, very, very special time for me, particularly my year as president in 1997. You saw pictures, I think, of some of the people that I was able to work with. Jim Mates, who recently passed away, a good friend, was there during that time. National Cattlemen's Beef Association. We have a sign. I put a new sign up there on the road by the turnoff to the feed yard. It had 4 organizations listed besides our Pratt Feeders name. KLA, and I always tell people KLA protected us from the state government in Topeka. National Cattlemen's Beef Association, they protect us from the federal government in Washington. U.S. Premium Beef, which we were a founding member, and Certified Angus Beef. And again, the K-State connections there. Kendall went through earlier the Kansans that have been president of NCBA. Pretty distinguished list. Jan's here tonight. Jan, thank you for your service. U.S. Premium Beef, Steve Hunt, Stan Linville, Tracy Thomas, all K-Staters. And a lot of our members are K-Staters. Certified Angus beef. I think when we got involved with them as a certified feed yard, Dr. Larry Cora, who was on the staff here for a long time, I think we kind of had a paradigm change in our operation because we started focusing on high-quality cattle. John Sticka, certified Angus beef president today, Kansas State graduate. K-State just continues to show up here in all of this. So a lot of those people had a lot of positive influence on me, and it was cool to work with them. Today I'm involved at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and there's a lot of things going on, and I thought I might just spend a couple of minutes and highlight some of the priorities that we're working on today. Trade's important. Over $300 a head on a fed steer today is a result of us being able to export beef to countries around the world. Japan, Korea, Mexico, Canada, many others. $2.1 billion last year of value was exported to Japan alone. One of the things we've got to work on is that because of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that our government bailed out on, we lost the ability to have lower tariffs to ship beef to Japan. So we're behind the 8 ball there, so we need to work on getting a bilateral trade agreement with Japan. There's a traceability project going on here in Kansas that many of you are involved in. Hopefully that will lead to the development of a national traceability program one day. How many have heard about fake meat? Fake meat's a new thing coming at us. We're going to be watching that. We want to make certain that it's regulated and labeled properly and that the nomenclature that's used to describe it doesn't use our products' names. Environment and sustainability continue to be challenges. How many of you heard about the new Green Deal, or the Green New Deal, whatever it is? AOC, that's the young lady. I think I call her another overly crazy person. AOC. She says we're going to have to stop our cows from farting. Can you believe we have to work with things like that? But that's what we're faced with today. So there's a lot going on there, and I'm pleased to be able to be an officer and to continue to be involved in that. And I want to close. Someone mentioned that I went on a mission trip last fall. I spent some time in the very deep bush of Zimbabwe, Africa. And if you think that things are bad, it's pretty tough over there. They have a new government, and today fuel costs $12.50 a gallon if they can get it. There's no food, there's nothing there, and those people are really, really challenged. But I learned something. We were working with a group of people called the Tonga people. They live in the very, very deep bush. They subsist from day to day. But I learned something about them. They have a legacy that says when a visitor leaves us, they leave a log burning on the fire. And in that culture, usually it's a child will come and take a coal from a cooking fire and carry it back to where they live, and they will start another fire with it. So that's the practical thing, but what it means is that when a visitor leaves and leaves a log burning on the fire, you leave a legacy. And so my goal for the rest of my life is I have 3 things where I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a legacy in my spiritual life and my relationship with God. I want to leave a legacy with my family. And finally, I want to leave a log burning on the fire as a legacy to my business and my career and my business. So again, thank you very, very much for this award. Thank you for recognizing me, and thank you to all the people that have helped me in my career. Many of you are here tonight. Thank you very much.
Wow. What a speech, what a life, what a career. You stand adjourned.